Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another exciting episode. This one is a two-part series where we are answering two key questions. Number one is why should you explore a career abroad? And number two is how can you build a successful startup in the AI space? And to discuss both of this, I have with me Kushal Sinha, who is the founder and CEO of LearnQ.ai. Interesting platform. They have gamified the entire learning experience, and starting with SAT, they have made it so easy to learn that you can go onto the platform, play a bunch of games, and understand where you're doing well, where you're not doing well. And because of this interesting concept, they have already amassed about 100,000 users on their platform. With the current pace, they would be closer to about $1 million in terms of revenue. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, Kujal. It's a pleasure to host you.
Thanks a lot, Vivek, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Going from Gaya to IIT and then from IIT to University of Wisconsin and then working for so many years. And now you have jumped into entrepreneurship. Why entrepreneurship? Given that your family background was mostly service class, when you went to IIT, you basically were looking for a job, but then you realized that you have this researcher in you and you went ahead and you did your PhD. Why entrepreneurship?
I'm guessing you must have seen this Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish speech by Steve Jobs. It's one of
Yeah.
the most famous, most watched. There was a line in which he said, like, if every morning you're standing in front of the mirror and you ask yourself this question, if this was my last day, would I be doing this? And if answer is no for the longest time, you need to change and you need to shake things up. I kind of was having very similar moment while I was in pharma. And not to mention, in the 7 years I was at pharma, I was lucky enough, I would say, like my company was going through this phase where we had multiple drugs in like mid to late stage. I was able and fortunate enough to work on like 4 drugs that ended up coming into the market, saving millions of lives. One of the first drugs that I worked on, like literally, I think at this point has cured Hep C. I was happy and I was able to do more, but there was a part of me which said like the skills and like the tools that I know could be used by not just like the patient population, but maybe by a broader audience. That drive was kind of, like propelling me. I was like, no, I actually like to do coding more, and AI is kind of, moving in a very, very interesting place. I could see some of these trends. And at the same time, I think if you know Chamath, one of the early employees of Facebook and helped it grow, and he's a big name. I remember like him listening to his podcast where he talked about the difference between like, the capital and labor. His point being, you can always build well by like owning or having the capital. It's really hard by being a labor. Those two things coming together propelled me on this entrepreneur journey. I was really excited by the tools that I was playing, mainly these AI algorithms and models. I was really excited about where the whole like computing space was going. You guys are now listening about NVIDIA. I actually took classes about NVIDIA and how to kind of code in GPU when I was in my PhD, like back in 2011. Like for me, NVIDIA was a name since then. I wrote my entire code in my PhD to utilize GPU programming. So I could see like how even like NVIDIA had progressed and how some of their newer chips were making computation fast. So I could see some of these convergences happening. I thought it will be foolish of me to not take a leap of faith on myself. I mean, entrepreneurship, I think, is at the end of the day, a leap of faith itself.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Vivek. I'm a graduate of IIT Roorkee. I'm a partner in India's leading consulting firm, advisor, investor in startups, and I create content to help you make better career choices. So if you're new here, do consider subscribing. And if you find the video useful, do give it a like. Did you like sort of had a history on working on the AI tech much before the AI came?
I've been using a lot of these models since my early PhD days. I was into scientific computing. I would broadly classify my research as something like maybe on the verge of bio and physics and computations as well. Each of my codes, even back then, on a supercomputer, by the way, and these are like literally one of the biggest supercomputers in US, would run for almost 3 to 4 months. In some cases, almost 6 months. Write these kind of codes, which will generate like then GBs of data. Like, each of these simulations will generate GBs of data. So there was no way I could analyze all that data without using machine learning technique. Back then, I remember like, a lot of these things that a lot of these models, which ended up being called as machine learning, it was just like data science tool, like, right? I mean, we were not even calling the name like fancy name machine learning, which was just an algorithm implemented in your code to analyze. Over time, it became machine learning, and then neural networks were not used that much just because it requires so much data. But over time, as I said, like with the advancements in computing, it was becoming easier and easier to use a lot of these tools. And then there are some breakthroughs that has happened. Like there's this paper in 2017, that attention is all you need, which proposed this transformer model that we now know LLMs. These papers, I think, were very pivotal. They proposed some of these new algorithms, which really propelled, like they improved the efficiency of these models by leaps and bounds. And yeah, so even at pharma, at AbbVie, I was actually the head of their scientific computing and data science lab. So I was heading a bunch of scientists who were actually playing with not just quantum mechanics, but very cutting edge AI tools. So we
Okay.
will pipe all our quantum mechanics simulation data into then, like, machine learning and AI tools to kind of, make sense of, like, again, like we were generating so much of data. I would say yes. I mean, I was playing with all these models.
Whether or not the chat GPT had been launched, you anyway would have been able to build an
Yeah,
LLM.
GPTs are based on the transformer architecture that I'm talking about. Like building a small LLM, it's very possible and doable. It's an area of research I'm really excited about. Like the small language model, nobody talks about it, but it's a very upcoming field of research. But if you think of large language model as a generalist, I would think of like a small language model as a specialist. To be very honest with some of these chips, yeah, it could be very possible that we will see a lot more SLMs than LLMs. Point being, like with the whole like cloud computing and a lot of different platforms, I mean, you can access these GPUs. And that was our path, to be very honest, Vivek. Early on at LearnQ, we were building our own transformer models, training on our own data. Definitely when GPT came, tried playing with GPT-2 as well, and it wasn't that powerful. But like, yeah, but from the 3.5 to 4, there was a drastic improvement in the predictability of these models. More or less, at this point in time at LearnQ, we are using, for a lot of the piping internally, we are not building our own LLMs anymore.
Okay, so AI background you had, but you were mostly in the pharma space. How did this idea came into existence, which is not into pharma, of course, it's into education space?
Interesting enough, this came from just chatting with my co-founder Piyush at LearnQ. So he was running his own company at that time, and it was more on the marketplace model, like having a one-on-one tutoring marketplace model. And he came to me with this problem that how do I even know that this teacher, when he went and taught the kid, learned? Can there be a way that we can have that visibility layer with these teachers? That was maybe the problem statement. And I was looking at that problem statement. I was like looking at the AI tools that I was playing with, and I thought, like, yeah, I think some of these AI tools could help you if we can, do classifications of all these questions, multidimensional classification. If the kids are playing with these games, maybe, we can build a knowledge graph of these kids, which will start to give you this visibility whether or not the kids are learning even post these one-on-one or like group classes. That sort of was the genesis. And then we thought, like, this idea is actually pretty cool. Nobody is doing it. Might as well we build this layer. Learning, to be very honest, happens at all levels, right? Like right from K-12 to colleges to even in corporate world these days. I mean, technology is moving so much faster that we all have to retrain. We thought this kind of paradigm could be then used across all these, right from maybe pre-K to grade.
I think you were having a deep understanding of the AI space, and Piyush was having a deep understanding of the education space. So he knew the problem, you had the solution, and you sort of came together to build this
Yep.
amazing solution. Why did you start with SAT, and what's the vision?
Even how we came to SAT is an interesting question, is an interesting journey. We did not start with SAT in a way.
Okay.
We actually started with a marketplace model. Our thought was exactly what I was just telling you, that we will build these AI tools, which then these teachers could be using to understand whether, the student need help in a particular topic and concept. We will be this marketplace where kids are finding these teachers, and as they are learning, our AI tools could help these teachers better. But we very soon realized that the market is very different. When we looked into our data, there was one particular segment which was more around the IB/IG curriculum and the SAT curriculum, where teachers were charging very good price and parents were ready to pay for it. All other segments, when we were analyzing the data, we were like, they're all like non-profitable. Like say even JE market, or like, like seventh grade
Okay.
or eighth grade or all these, right? I was able to see that there is a reverse set of like forces on both direction. Like teachers want to get paid 500 or 600 rupees per hour, while the parent want to pay only like 200 or like 150 rupees per hour. In that kind of situation, I was thinking, like, the only way a marketplace model would survive is if we can just keep having VC money and kind of like we keep funding and to bridge this gap. Like the unit economics was never making sense. For sure, like the SAT exams and IBIG of the world, like these teachers were like requesting like 1,500 to 2,000 and 2,500 rupees per hour, and parents were happily paying it without even like doing any negotiations. And we are like, what is this segment? Let's double down. Let's double click there. For a while, we just started to focus more on IBIG and like get more teachers there, and we saw our profitability boost, we saw our revenues boost. But again, marketplace models, you only get a commission. So we kind of entered in a full-fledged service of the SAT exam, ran that for a while. That's where basically most of the LearnQ platform got built, because we had our own teachers, and then we built the entire LearnQ platform kind of to help them to teach the students which were coming on our platform as part of the service. Very soon, we all realized that running again a service focused company with a very small team would not be operationally durable, and we need to maybe scale. We all internally kind of felt like we really love to build products, so we completely made a pivot on the product side of the things. And SAT, again, because of all this data that we had starting from the marketplace to service, and knowing the fact that SAT as an exam was changing in a very near future and going digital and adaptive, we could see that there will be a chaos in the market. And we thought like, chaos is good. We'll shake things up and maybe create a place for us.
Next exam or next thing that you're going to sort of target?
Like the way we have built our technology at this point really doesn't care like what exam we are teaching. And we were very purposeful about it. I think from this point onward, definitely the next target market is the adjacent markets like ACTs and APs and GREs and GMATs. But the way the platform is built is that probably it will take us like a month or so. That's it, to kind of spun off these other courses. Even going further in the future, we really think that we are not the best people to kind of even bring these courses. Teachers who are expert in these fields, they should be the one kind of bringing these courses on our platform. So the next layer that we are working on is to kind of completely generalize our own platform, like generalize these AI tools that even we are using to build, say, the SAT template, so that they can use these templates, they can build their own blueprints, and they can ask our AI agents to kind of execute on these blueprints, kind of completely take that away. So like in a way, our platform will become like an AI assistant to these teachers or these professors or these guys in future, and can execute the entire workflow for them. We are already doing it right now. In the next phase, we will open up these layers to these educators as well.
Another question on the entrepreneurial side, right? So when somebody is thinking of building a startup, and especially something at such a large scale, the first thing that comes to their mind is funding and having a team and all of that. Given that you have such a small team and you haven't raised funding even, what has been your approach?
The way I see with AI, and I think there is data to back up. Recently, Sequoia published this data. If you compare from the historical number, I think they tracked the data from like 1980s, and you see like a exponential decay curve on the number of employees. And I think it will even go further down with AI. If you think of it, like it's a really powerful assistant that you have. It can write codes for you. It can write copyrights for you. It can write sales emails for you. Suddenly, a lot of the places where you needed lot many help, you don't. Maybe you can run a company with a very small team. I know a company which is making like $50 million in ARR with just 3-member team. You still need people, but you can outsource some of the work, right? You can outsource to agencies for like maybe you running your marketing and other things. And in this day, we can keep very lean team and still be able to execute. The biggest thing, as you said, I think, is to look at their unit economics. A lot of people, just because they have VC funding, they completely ignore the unit economics, and they are running a negative unit economics from day one, thinking that when they will reach to scale, they will flip the game. But that never happens. I think once the user is used to having things at a lower price point, it's just psychologically hard to push them to pay for more. I think the reverse works really well. If you have a higher price point, or if you have a good unit economics, if you lower the price down, everybody is happy, and you may see more adoption. At LearnQ, I mean, just because we did not have money, we were forced to have a profitable unit economics, and that's the only way we could operate, by making money month on month to kind of fund our operational expenses and other expenses. I think that was one thing. And I think the second thing that I see a lot of folks making a mistake, if you have ever read Paul Graham's essays, he has basically said the number one killer for any startup is hiring. And I so deeply agree with that, because that's one of the biggest costs you will incur at a very early stage. At LearnQ, we build this resiliency. We have this motto that hire slow but fire fast. Keep teams small but like a very dedicated team. We never went for overhiring. We always looked at this metric called revenue per employee and always kind
Okay.
of looked at whether or not we are growing that. If you do overhiring, even if you're growing your revenue, maybe your revenue per employee might go down. If you have to really kind of think of like scaling in a more profitable manner, and if you keep looking at that revenue per employee, you yourself will get a check.
And what do you think will be your team size when you are, let's say, about $1 million in revenue?
I hope it will still be like maybe 10, 15 people, not more.
That team size would be able to take you up to what revenue numbers?
We will need to scale. I'm not denying that, and we'll have to hire more folks as we grow. One of the ideals, I would say, we say internally, like when WhatsApp was sold for almost 18 billion or something, they only had like less than 50 employees. That would be the ideals. We don't want to grow teams just for the sake of growing and saying that, oh, we have such a large team, and for every hire we ask, do we really need this person? Have we maxed out our own capacities? Have we maxed out the AI tools that we are using? Can we not go and do this through an agency or an intern or something? The answer is really no in all those situations. Then it makes sense to kind of go and hire.
I was looking at your post on LinkedIn and you were showing this in the last few months itself. You've got like a huge jump in the number of customers who are using your platform, which is where a lot of startups throw a lot of money. What has been your strategy? Has it been paid? Has it been organic? And if it has been organic, what has been your strategy? What led to such a huge jump in customer acquisition that you saw?
Funny enough, like when we analyze the data, like most of this traffic was direct, which
Okay.
is like people just somehow had the link and they directly came. I was looking at the data, and like I think only 1/10 of the traffic came through our paid ads. Almost 70% of it was coming directly. I believe it's mostly because, kids somehow, maybe through friends or word of mouth, are getting the name LearnQ and like coming on the platform. And most of this traffic at this point is in US, which is the biggest target market for SAT. So I think that's another good sign that we have. In the last few months, we have definitely worked on our SEOs. We have worked on making our product much better. We have added way more AI tools. And we are not, again, building AI tools for the sake of building. We are thinking, how will this help a kid who's like in this process, right? And will this AI tool be useful? Like, so we added recommendation engine, which wasn't there before. Now AI is constantly giving you recommendations. I see you made these mistakes, and maybe these are the areas that you should focus on. We added Ask Mia, which can go literally deep dive on any given test. You can ask her like, hey, can you give me step-by-step solutions to why should I even care about this problem? And it will tell you like, oh, if you love cricket or if you love marketing, this is why you need this skill. So it at least tries to connect the dot, because I think once you know like how these concepts are useful to you in life, maybe you care about them more. So that's how at least we were thinking about it.
The best sort of
Yeah.
marketing is word of the mouth marketing, which is what you are getting, plus I think the organic stuff that you have fixed, again, using the AI. I think anybody who's, let's say, trying to build a startup in this space, if they have a good enough idea and they are focused on the unit economics and there is good size of a company that somebody can build with a smaller size team, how easy or difficult would it be for somebody who's new into this space, understands some bit of coding and can use, let's say, a platform like GPT to build such scalable solutions?
I think it's totally possible, Vivek, at this point in time. Why we are seeing the mainstreamification of AI? Because now there are so many developer tools where you don't even need to know the intricacies of a lot of these AI models. Like when we started, we were looking at each of these intricacies, and maybe over our career, we're trying to solve like, oh, how do I improve this factor or that factor, like, to get the better accuracy, right? But all that layer is now literally being absorbed by someone like, say, OpenAI. And I think their promise to the entire developer community is that you don't need to figure about these parameters. We'll give you a really good working model. You just have to bring your problem and plug in with our API, or like be it Anthropic or Cohere or any of like these, even like Facebook's Llama is doing pretty good, or like, Mixtrals of the world. You don't have to kind of really know deeper. It's just like any other API that a lot of these developers would call. Maybe you
Got
will
it.
call like Firebase for logging somebody in on your app, right? So it's something like that, that it basically it has boiled down to. From there, it will get even easier and easier. In
Amazing.
fact, I would argue maybe in couple years, or maybe not even couple years, maybe by end of this year, people who don't know coding can also build AI apps. I'm really excited about couple projects like Alpha Codium. Basically, they're proposing like AI write your entire project. AI is like a GPT engineer who's breaking down everything. He's acting as a product manager. He's acting as a program manager. He's writing all the requirements. And then he's going and writing code for each of these requirements and then stitching everything together and building the entire app together. And they're building these feedback loops into these AI programming where there is another AI which is critiquing, the code writing that has been done, like then improving and all that. So there are a lot of these kind of projects that are like in a very early stage, but I can see that maybe in 6 months or 7 months or like a year down the line, you will have an autonomous AI which is writing the entire code for you. You maybe just
Yeah.
have to bring in the idea if you
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
good one, and like,
Yeah.
or maybe just build the business around that idea. I think that's where you need to focus on.
And Kushal, let's say somebody hearing this episode is very inspired and understands coding and has an idea and want to start working on it, but is sort of does not have enough sort of depth in understanding on AI. What are some of the resources that you would recommend that person?
It's a field which is very like it's evolving at a very fast pace. In my own writing, like when I had to kind of make somebody understand in my own team like how, hey, you should know the basics of AI, so please, so I had to kind of figure out like some resources that I could give to them. I found Pinecone, which is a vector database company, but they've done really good job demystifying a lot of like basics of AI and like how these algorithms think. So I would say their documentation and their blogs are really good. I would say Hugging Face is another platform where you can actually build a ML model or deploy an ML model or AI model. It's literally like a Wikipedia sort of like architecture. The biggest feature you would have is GitHub. Go on GitHub and go on the explore section and see the projects that are trending. And these days, most of the projects that are trending are AI projects. And many times the documentations around these projects are really good. And I would say that's the bleeding edge, right? Like the first two resources I said, it's kind of like getting the basic general understanding, maybe what has happened in the field in the last 10 years. And if you really want to be at the bleeding edge, then GitHub projects is the way to be. And I think maybe the last one would be just reading papers. Maybe I'm coming from that scientist background, so I still love to read papers. I would say more on, again, the bleeding edge of the side.
Thank you so much, Kushal, for spilling all the beans on building a startup on the AI space. I know that you're profitable and you have a small team and you're running it well, but are you sort of at a certain level looking at raising funding? And somebody, let's say, who's looking to build an AI startup should be looking at funding at a certain level or not?
Try and answer like in the order. So yeah, like the first answer, yes, we think that we should raise funding now. One of the reasons we avoided the early capital because we did not want to go into that mindset of just growing for the sake of growing, and we wanted to kind of have that early product in a way that we really think and we can monetize very early on to kind of start charging for our product. Like we did not wait for it. Not having that VC money in our pocket pushed us to kind of do very early experiments and all that. But I think given the product and where it is, given the kind of the traction that we are seeing, we definitely think that having more money in our pocket will help us in at least the marketing and sales aspect, and like and even accelerate the product. I think we have a very clear vision for the next 5 to 10 years on where we want to kind of grow this company and how we want to kind of grow it. We have a business that is making money and it is growing. So I think at this point, bringing money will be a delta jump in the scale of the, and that would be my advice. Maybe resist raising money until you have at least executed your original vision and you have figured out that people are going to pay for your solution, and you've figured out that like what they are paying is at least at a unit economics profitable for you, and even if you scale it will stay profitable. So if you have figured out at least those basics, maybe that's a good point in time that you can go and raise money. And I think the biggest cost is hiring. There's so
Yeah.
many startups programs at this point in time. I mean, we had AWS for startup and Google for startup. We haven't paid for our cloud computing so far. That way, you can completely kind of reduce your SaaS budget to zero. The only other cost
Yeah.
you're incurring
Yeah.
is employees. And if AI could replace them, I've given ChatGPT Plus account to all my employees. Literally, I think everybody is like 5x more productive. If that's the case, then you can actually have a very small team and a very productive team. And you can maybe resist this urge to raise money very early on. And
That was all
so,
from
yeah.
my side, Kushal. And anything else that you want to add before we wind up this episode?
No, I think it was a lovely, and thanks for touching upon so many, different. I think I kind of relived my whole life. Definitely, I would encourage your audience as well to kind of go study abroad, and like if they are thinking and if they ever want to reach out, they can definitely always reach out. Send me a DM on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Kushal. Thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure talking to you
Yeah,
today.
thanks, Vivek. Thanks for having me.
Hoping this helps. This is Vivek signing off. Like, subscribe, share, and take care.